So now in this episode, we want to talk about Nancy Pearcey. We want to introduce Nancy Pearcey, her book, and her message to the Chinese audience. You know her more than I do. I remember one time we had our national conference in Washington, D.C., and then we invited her through you as a guest speaker. And I was a translator, although there's a lot of things I probably translated wrong because it's very deep and very complex. So could you tell a little bit about Nancy Pearcey's background and to share with our audience?
So yes, Nancy's a good friend. I think my wife hears from her more than I do these days. Nancy, as a young person going through college, late 60s, and of course, the globe was just burning with a youth movement that was asking questions about, the legitimacy of any claim in their life or in society as also. Universities were moving and teaching very aggressively things like atheism, Marxism, existentialism, nihilism, and so it came through in the music. There was a infusion from India and other places of Eastern mysticism, and all of these things challenged the truth claims of Christianity, which every idolatry is going to. So what happened is that the pastors, the churches, and parents, they didn't understand the biblical worldview. They didn't understand the competing worldviews that were coming at their kids fast and furious through music, through school, through art, the hippie movement and all of that. And the baby boomers, they're saying, why? Why should I believe that? Just don't tell me to believe. Why should I believe it? So why was a big question in the 60s. And of course, Nancy, like me and so many others that were teenagers and college students during that time, even though I grew up in a Catholic home, she grew up in a Lutheran home, but the ideas that were permeating the culture, that it sliced straight through Catholic, Lutheran, Baptist, Methodist, evangelical, charismatic. It didn't matter what church, denomination or group that you were in. Ideas, they permeate everything. You can't build a door or even a firewall in China to keep the ideas out. And so those ideas were big, and Nancy took the ideas seriously. And, is it true that...
As you do.
Yes, I do. And so Nancy was questioned such as, well, does God exist, and is this true? And she was struggling with it, and she was reading, and she was asking her parents that. Her parents weren't able to answer. The preachers couldn't answer. And so she found herself trekking in Europe like so many American kids were, during that particular time in history. And she came to L'Abri, where Francis Schaeffer was, and she was there for a short time and then decided she was going to leave. And so she came back to the States, and then she began to do a lot of reading on her own. Another step deeper, it not only was the question, is it true that God exists? She wanted to know whether truth existed. And so for her, the pursuit of understanding whether truth exists and how can she know these things, it was a passion in her life. She resolved that, and because she resolved the truth question, then she was able to test the various truth claims, whether it be Christian or Hindu or Hare Krishna or Mormon or existentialism or modernism or postmodernism, and all of these isms that are, that so many American kids just took a little bit of each one of those isms and, plate up of what they wanted to believe, not realizing that they were incoherent, they couldn't hold together, they were contradictory, but the human being, because of an emotional commitment, often holds all these contradictory things, together, or because of a social commitment, because it's what everybody around them is doing. And too many people, they're part of a group, including the church, for psychological reasons and sociological reasons, and very rarely does anybody say, is this true? I cannot think of a single time of being in Christian worship service or in a Sunday school class where somebody raised their hand and say, okay, preacher, I hear what you said. Is it true? the question doesn't get asked. However, it's at the heartbeat of all of these decisions that young people and others were making about the philosophy and the religions that still hit our kids today. And in fact, they hit the kids at an earlier age, and kids are walking away from Christianity. Used to be when they got to college, when they're 18, 19, and 20. Well, now they're 10, 11, and 12, and they're done with Christianity. Anything that they thought was good, they've used that up, and they're pursuing something else. So Nancy pursued the concept of truth, and of course, that very conference you were talking about, we've got the book Total Truth, and excellent book, presented the ideas of that book in the conference, and she addressed the sacred-secular split. And she said, we need to be talking about truth. Now, of course, she did go back to L'Abri. She studied some more under Francis Schaeffer and others who were there, and then came back to the States. And, she holds a doctorate in theology and philosophy. And she's a very brilliant woman. She's written many books, some on her own, excellent ones like Total Truth, Saving Leonardo, Love Thy Body, which is an excellent book. I would encourage any Christian, that is trying to communicate to young people of this generation what is so wrong about, say, same-sex marriage or LGBTQ plus, and most people don't realize it as it being destructive to the human being. Nancy answers all those questions in Love Thy Body. So she's a prolific writer, excellent material. If you're going to be new to the writings of Nancy, you need to take notes, you need to write down your questions, answer the questions, the new vocabulary, get definitions. But what she has is so important to say, and many homeschool moms love reading and using the Nancy Pearcey material.
So you want to share a little bit about the key ideas about the Total Truth. It's probably very apparent with the book title, Total Truth.
Right. So Total Truth is very much connected to the concept of what we were talking about in a couple of our previous episodes, in that there's the lower story and the upper story. And
what is the lower story, upper story? To our audience?
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for, you have a house, okay? And the house is somewhat of a metaphor for a person. And so in the lower story, on the first floor, is the fact domain of reality. 1 + 1 is 2. 2 + 2 is 4. What are just the facts? And so down in the lower story, on the first floor of the house of most people in Western civilization, both Chinese and Americans and Europeans, and now Africans, South America, Asians, these ideas permeate the globe. This is not unique to the American church. It's not unique to the European church. And even for our 20-plus years, my 13 trips to China with you and engaging with Christian Chinese leaders, that it doesn't take long before in the conversation I can detect that when the missionaries came, they delivered not only the truth of the Scripture, but they also brought with them this split between the lower story and the upper story, and far too many people that are in the countries that were the mission field of the 19th century, that these are now embedded in the church, and the church doesn't realize, they're so used to it, they are unaware of the fact that this kind of split fractures the human being, as opposed to what salvation is supposed to do, is to integrate as mind, body, spirit, and emotion, will, desire, that pulling it all together so we're an integrated whole before the living God, who He Himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, is an integrated whole. What this split does is that in the lower story, it's all about fact, okay? And then in the upper story, it's all about feelings. It's about meaning, or, let's look at the stars, how beautiful they are. And that's what happened with the Romantic movement, is the Romantic movement was all about the feely, touchy, petting puppies and kitties and all the wonderful, beautiful things of life. But that's not the lower story. The lower story is hard science, rocket science, calculation, accounting, and banking, and government, and that's all down in the lower story. And so when we look at the world like that, it fragments not just the society that we live in, or the church that we attend, or the family that we're a part of, that fragmentation, it runs right down the heart of every human being. And so if that's true, how are we supposed to love the Lord our God with our whole mind? If only the feelings count in Christianity. In one of Nancy's videos, she talks about a college student that was at the university, and on one side of the chalkboard, the teacher drew a heart. And then on the other side of the chalkboard, the teacher drew a brain and drew a line, and that the heart and the brain are as separate from each other as they possibly could be. And the brain is where we deal with the facts and the sciences and mathematics and that kind of thing. The heart is where we feel and we find meaning, and the two, are separate. And so Christians, I've attended church in Los Alamos with many Christians who engage in science, that they themselves, that they will say, well, science is about the physical, reality, religion is all about the heart. And so even people from not just the baby boomer generation, but the great generation that came before us and the generation before that, and this is deeply embedded in American theology and church life. And so when the missionaries went out, they carried that with them, and they carried it to China, and they carried it to Africa. And so people who accept Jesus as Lord, that their mind is in one place, but their heart is in another. And that's one of the reasons it makes it so easy for people to go to work and not care about the poor. And then they go to church and they're concerned about good quality music and hallelujah, praise the Lord, and that there's no interconnection between the two. However, both of those are part of the human experience.
So what is the outcome of that upper story and the lower story, the damage?
Oh, the damage is huge. There is no human endeavor that has not been affected. For an example would be something like in the area of government, the separation between church and state. In science, the separation between faith and reason. And faith gets redefined, so it's no longer that somebody is fully persuaded that Jesus is Lord, that includes the mind. And a commitment because of what the mind has thought about who Jesus is, that all of a sudden faith and belief, it becomes an irrational leap. Francis Schaeffer dealt with this, Os Guinness deals with this, Nancy deals with this. It's our lives are fragmented all the way down to how we address our children. One of the key things that took place in the 20th century is that the human being was completely devalued because the split, that on the one side, the human being is looked at, well, this is just an organism that's a complex machine. It has no intrinsic value. So this fracturing of the human being leads historically to devaluing the human being and mass genocide. It doesn't matter whether it's China, it doesn't matter whether it's Russia, it doesn't matter whether it's Germany in World War II or America today, where more than 50 million unborn human beings have been slaughtered for economic gain in our country. And so the spill out is tremendous. It affects how universities are structured. You have the arts and then you have the sciences, and the two of them never meet unless it comes to architecture and you want buildings that are beautiful but yet also functional. One of the things that Nancy said in one of her presentations, she talks about that you have somebody that goes to the lab and they do their science and everything is a very complex machine. And he says, well, go home and try to treat your wife as only a complex machine. No, she's a human being, right. And she's
and
God.
She said, you better not.
Yeah, you better not. You better not. And so it's what took place in Genesis 3 fragmented the human being, mind, body, spirit, and emotion, all collapse in the fall. The blood of Jesus addresses the mind, body, spirit, and emotion, that our future is an integrated whole, a resurrected being like Christ, that we come together as an integrated whole, and even our relationship with God, that because of the fall, our relationship with God is ruptured. Okay, because of the fall, our relationship with each other is structured. We see that with Adam and Eve being separated from his wife, and he blames her and then blames God for giving him to her. And then what happens is that God puts them out of the garden, so he's alienated from the environment. And today we're looking at all kinds of environmental degradation that has come about through what people refer to as human progress, and it's questionable whether it's progress or not. But what was lost is the idea that this planet is a cosmic accident, that the human being is a cosmic accident, everything is a human social construct. Sooner or later, everything is going to burn up, and it really had no meaning to begin with. People can't live without hope, so they try to create their own deities, or they try to create their own meaning. But you see, what Nancy points out is that when we're talking about total truth, there's not science truth and then religious truth. It's total truth, because the human being was made to be a total integrated whole, and that the creation is an integrated thing that God has made, because God himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, is an integrated being. So in total,
what is the difference between the upper story, lower story, and the sacred and secular split? Is that overlapping?
It's very similar. You know, the secular is down here where we do the banking and we do the science and bake cupcakes and, you know, things like that. And then the upper story is this is the secular, and this is all the feeling, this is all the religion, and so when it comes to when you're doing your science and your bank book, the math better be correct, okay? Because if the math isn't correct in your bank book, you got a problem with the bank, and you're going to go in and you're going to fix it, because there's something in reality that's true, is that they forgot to count one of my paychecks, and I want that money accounted for in my account. That's fact. Well, then when it goes to church, there's nothing there that's fact. There's religious truth that is meaningful, and anybody that makes a rational claim that says that some things that present themselves religiously are true and others are false, they go, well, truth doesn't work up here. And so what Nancy's basically saying is that there's not religious truth and secular truth. She gives the example, I love this one, and it's the example of a map. Okay,
that's right.
And so if you have a map, and you know where you're on the map, you know the roads that go out to the edge of the map, and you're only doing science, well, there's nothing inside this map that deals with science that tells us about morality. It might tell us what might cause a human death, but it doesn't say that my killing somebody is immoral. Science can't do that. But yet the scientists inside themselves emotionally, because God wrote the law in their hearts, that emotionally, that they realize that I'm not supposed to be killing someone. I'm not supposed to be slapping my wife. I'm not supposed to be abusing my children. There's this sense of this is unjust, or this is not right, or this is wrong. And so the map of science, it's not big enough. They need a bigger map to encompass all of human existence.
Yeah.
And the only worldview, and this is why I'm not a naturalist. This is why I came back away from naturalism and things that were produced by naturalism, such as socialism. See, socialism isn't a standalone phenomena. You have a naturalistic worldview, and on top of that is built socialist governments and socialist economic systems. So what happens is that if the naturalistic worldview was no longer there, then the socialism would collapse. The same thing in politics, and whenever I teach Christian candidates how to run for office, before I teach them how to buy their bumper stickers and their yard signs, and go to a debate, I teach them what is the meaning of government from a biblical perspective. Let's provide a biblical perspective so you know why you want to be involved in government, so that you could worship God through that engagement, just like we talked about in our last episode regarding salt and light and Christian biblical worldview projects. And so there are Christians that if they're not grounded in a biblical worldview, that what will happen is that they'll get elected, they'll go into government, And they will behave just like the naturalist because they received naturalism in their public education, or very sadly, in many cases, they went to a Christian school and still received naturalism at a Christian school. So the influence touches everything in society. Anything that a human being can be engaged in, if the person has brought some Christian worldview and a naturalistic worldview and other worldviews together, that package will affect everything that human being engages in.
The Chinese church and the pastors are very big on cultural mandate. Like our CPF, we have evangelical mandate and a cultural mandate. And a lot of times, as we said earlier, that, maybe we don't have very deep or profound thinking. As some of the ministry I got involved is that, we want to reach out to education, medical, arts. As a Christian, we want to influence, we want to engage. But Nancy brought out a very interesting point of cultural mandate. It's that a lot of churches focus on salvation. But when people are saved, and bring them back on track. And that track for what? That's a very interesting question. That is cultural mandate, starting very beginning, God's purpose for saving people, renew them so that they can now apply God's purpose of their life. For example, she said, we have the image of a God of creativity. Mm-hmm. We need to be creative. Even persuasion, we need to be creative. Everything is in God's image to subdue the domain, right? So as one time I heard the U.S. government has the policy of cash a clunker, which means you trade your old car for cash to stimulate the economy. And I say, Bill, that's a good program because, I can get a benefit and government can get, economy going. And you said, no, Jane, don't do that because this is not a Christian way of look at the resource and really biblical worldview of dealing with the economy. So I said, well, little by little, I was understanding. I have a conversation. I began to think about, so interesting and so eye-opening about the cultural mandate. So I want you to share a little bit about Nancy's points of a cultural mandate through, Genesis 3.
Again, let's come back to narrowing it down, what is meant by cultural mandate. Mm-hmm. And there's two great commands that God gives, apart from loving the Lord your God with your whole mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Those are commandments. But apart from that, there's the mandate or the commission at the end of Matthew in chapter 28 to go. That's in the imperative tense form. Go into the world, or as you are going in the world, make disciples of all ethnic groups, Irish, Chinese, Korean, Scot, Scandinavian, that doesn't Eskimo, that Jesus died for all people. There's no room for racism in the church because all of us are created in the image and likeness of God. All of us on Judgment Day are going to be judged by the same standard regardless of our ethnic group. And so there's this great commission to go to all, we translate it nations in English. I don't know how it's translated in Chinese, but in nations, in the American mind and much of the European mind is like, well, there's the nation of Canada and the nation of France and the nation of Spain and the nation of the United States. God's not talking about geopolitical systems. He's talking about people groups, language groups, subgroups of language groups. And when we've done our Hong Kong conference, we've had Christian brothers that have come in from all over China. There's over 400 minority groups in China, and many of them were present at our Hong Kong conference. And so there's the Great Commission. But before there was the Great Commission, there was the creation mandate, meaning that at the time of creation, at the time that God made Adam and Eve, that he called them to have dominion over the planet, dominion over creation, not just this planet, but to have dominion in creation. And out of all the creatures, dogs are cute, but they were not given the creation. Horses were not given. Elephants were not given the creation mandate. The human being, because the human being is made in the image and likeness of God, God placed that responsibility and gift and blessing on Adam and Eve to have dominion and to offer all of that up as, in worship to God. The Bible-believing Christians, they forgot that. They were believing the Bible, but they didn't understand that part. They became disconnected from that particular part.
But they're focused on
and they were
saving the soul.
just saving souls. But see, in the Bible, it doesn't say we have souls. Okay, it says that we are souls. As one missionary said, I think it was a missionary in China, said, well, I know you told me I'm supposed to be concerned about saving souls, but I noticed that they were very strongly attached to a body, and that I'm supposed to be concerned about the whole. Well, in Hebraic psychology, God forms man of the dust of the earth. He breathes into man the breath of life. He doesn't give him a soul. It says he becomes a person. It's the word soul is psyche, psychology, that he becomes a living being, an integrated unit. And it's the whole person that Jesus is concerned about and that God is concerned about. And one of the beautiful things I love about being in the building where your church meets here in Albuquerque, up on the wall there's that passage from Ephesians chapter 4 that he gave some as apostles and some as evangelists and some as teachers and pastors. And it says for, and here's the purpose clause. The purpose clause is, and it's translated very, very poorly in the English. It says, for the equipping or the preparing of the saints for the work of ministry. Well, too many American congregations says, we have a job for you at church and we're going to train you to do that job. Run the copy machine, wash the floors, prepare communion, and all those things have to be done. But that's not the meaning of that particular passage. That word in the Greek that we translate over into equip or prepare, it's used in two senses. One is the sense that if you have an arm and you break it, that what happens is that arm has to be set and healed so it can function the way it was intended to function. The second is a fishing net. And the fishing net, if it's ripped, it can't function the way that it was intended to function. It has to be stitched up so then it can function. And what Paul is saying there is that when a person comes to Jesus to be a holy one, to be a Christian, that when the saints come, every single one of us comes broken. It's the job of the leaders to bring about the healing in their life so that they can function for their calling, not for jobs around the church, but that where is their place in God's creation, that they could live out the creation mandate in their lives, their work, their jobs, their family, their businesses, and no matter where that takes them. But the church has narrowed it because they're only concerned about salvation and making sure the floors get scrubbed at church. But that's not what that passage is about. It's about the creation mandate and bringing about healing so every single Christian can fulfill the creation mandate as God created them to fulfill that. She wanted to know whether truth existed.